Kia ora, Aotearoa, salam, namaste, sat sri akal. I'm your host, Ajay Vasish, with The Weekender on Sunday. Welcome to the show. In our head-to-head series today, we are going to talk to the man who might just be the key factor in our lives post-election in terms of keeping Kiwis in jobs. We are talking to none other than the Employment Minister, the Honourable Willie Jackson. Coming very soon, but centre stage in New Zealand and elsewhere this week have been the following stories. Election 2020, a fresh new Auckland Central poll shows the tight race between Labour's Helen White and National's Emma Mello becomes tighter. And the Greens' Chloe Swarbrick is out to play a bit of a spoiler. Is that going to be reflected on the national stage as well? We'll keep our tabs on it. Post hearing about President Trump's COVID positive status, the US has put nuclear planes in the sky. Why this drastic step? We're going to look at that as well. And early birds hit the polling stations for voting. Voters are starting to line up at polling stations throughout the country with a steady stream turning out from yesterday. The other big story is the unfortunate landmark of India hitting 100,000 coronavirus deaths. 1 लाख से ज़्यादा मृत. एक नज़र भारत की बढ़ती और विस्फोटक कोरोना संक्रमण स्थिति पर भी डालेंगे. और शो के अंत में हमारे WhatsApp कॉर्नर में कुछ मुस्कुराहट. What's life after all without a smile? Well, on to something a bit more interesting and perhaps a bit more serious fare. In our head-to-head series, today our guest is the Honourable William Wakatere Jackson. He's a list member for Labour Party, first got elected in November 1999, member of the 46th and 52nd Parliaments, big gap in there, and a former top Maori broadcaster, urban Maori chief executive. He was an Alliance MP from 1999 to 2002 and in 2017 was elected as a Labour MP. In his teenage years, Jackson attended Mangere College, jobs including trade union organizer, talkback radio host, and urban Maori advocate. He was also the manager for the groundbreaking brand Moana and the Moa Hunters, I remember them, throughout the 90s and 80s. Currently, he holds a portfolios as Minister of Employment and is the Associate Minister for ACC and Maori Development. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jackson. How are you doing this sunny Sunday, just 2 weeks out from the election?
Very good, very good. Good morning and good afternoon, I should say. And it's lovely to be on this show with you, AJ. And we're all watching Auckland Central very closely, aren't we? Helen White is
Yes.
doing really well there. I mean, it's quite a seat to watch. When you talked about 1999, my
Yes.
former mate Sandra Lee actually won that seat and beat Preble, I think, in 1993. So it's the seat to watch, and it's closed up there, hasn't it?
It has. And is it a portent, do you think, for what might happen on the national level as well? What happens there?
You know, these are the seats we're watching, because I suppose the Jacinda factor has pushed us up in seats like that. We want to watch that one. We want to watch Wanganui. We want to watch where Chris Bishop is in Wellington down there in the Hut. We're going to watch Takanini. You know, there's a number of seats we'll be watching very closely that we think we've got a real chance of winning. I suppose it's that Jacinda mania or Jacinda magic that has given us an advantage, and we'll take it, AJ. We'll take it.
Yes, I think COVID has been very kind to you in that respect, but it's Jacinda's election to lose as well if things go a bit topsy-turvy in the next 2 weeks. So it'll be very interesting to watch what happens.
Don't say that, AJ. Don't say that, AJ. We're going well. We're going well.
I'm just trying to take a balanced view. So, by the way, do you prefer Mr. Jackson or Willie?
Willie is fine, AJ. You know,
all right.
Unless you want me to call you Mr. AJ, you know. So Willie is fine, AJ.
So it's common in India to call people Mr. with their first name. So Mr. AJ would actually work quite well, and then I'd have to probably call you Mr. Willie.
You know, I've got quite a history with India, AJ. My father died there, actually. He was on holiday, and I know we're going off the topic of it, but he died there in the Taj Mahal Hotel. Had a heart attack there in 1994, and the people in the government was fabulous to us. You know, we have this spiritual connection, and my mother went back there, and it was a we got a special connection, and we never forget that. So I thought I'd drop that in, as well as say
No,
we've got a better cricket side than yours. So there you go.
well, those ups and downs will continue, and very sorry to hear about your father's death in India. At the same time, I think dying in India is probably a spiritual connection on a different level as well. So
It
you
was.
know you would have seen things from a very different perspective, the way things happen there.
Yes, no, absolutely. It's a spiritual connection we will always treasure, actually. So yeah, we've had that relationship. So we expect all the Indian people to vote for us, obviously, AJ. So
I can't speak for each and everyone, but I think you have quite the following in the Indian community for the Labour Party. So I think you're probably on to a good start there. Now, just to move on to the big questions that probably going to have a very big impact post this COVID-19 world having sort of struck us in the middle of our foreheads from nowhere, is going to be really about unemployment going forward. The seasonally adjusted employment rate fell to 4%, and then it was like hovering around 4.2. For men, it's like around 3.6, down from 4%, which is like surprising. And for women, it actually kind of stayed stable, 4.4 to 4.3. But the pundits out there are saying these are all not really adjusting low coming in terms of the unemployment figures. So do you think this is just a cushioning of the blow because of the wage subsidies, or have you just kind of kicked the can down the road?
Yeah, I think, AJ, that we've done a good job considering all the original dire predictions from Treasury. You remember some of those predictions? They were talking 15, 20%, and we've got it at a reasonable level right now. The reality is that we've got to create jobs and create opportunities for New Zealanders. And so our whole focus is on creating jobs and upskilling Kiwis, and by prioritising initiatives, such as free apprenticeships and targeted areas of vocational training. We're talking 1.6 billion in terms of apprentice investments, and since we put that in July, we've seen 5,000 apprentices come through in the building sector. So it's all about investments in these areas. We say National did nothing in terms of didn't do enough in terms of the skills base. We're going to be investing in infrastructure, housing, and our people, and changing the rules around procurement by ensuring the annual $42 billion spend, creates more jobs, uses more sustainable construction practices, and result in better incomes for Māori and Pacifica. So, there's a lot happening. We've also got a $200 million regional fund to grow our regions and employment opportunities there. And in January, I think, of this year, we announced the 12 billion New Zealand infrastructure upgrade. So when you've got an emphasis on the training, on the apprenticeship, we see opportunities. So thousands of jobs are going to come about through our environmental strategy. We're looking
at the risk of interrupting you. Typically, what would a new apprentice expect to earn or be subsidized because of this scheme? What would he look to earn while he's under apprenticeship?
Well, while what we're doing is like there's a lot of ways to do it, So some of the apprenticeships, the apprenticeships vary, and we'll work in with the different employers in terms of the wages. Right. But for instance, I've brought in, for instance, give you an example, I brought in mana and mahi, AJ. You would have heard that one. Now, mana and mahi was originally working for the dole. I said to so that was what it was originally. They were saying, people said, oh, they got to work for the dole. My line was, well, hang on, you can't work for the dole. It's and what young person wants to work for those sort of wages. So we've got a variety in terms of the apprenticeships, between about 1850 and 21, 22, those sort of rates are reasonable rates for young people. And I say to employers, you want to pay a little bit more than the unemployment benefit, and we'll give you subsidies to carry you through. And they're picking up on this, to top it up. And that's
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about there. And we're getting a real pickup. And in terms of what we've done in terms of apprenticeships, we've extended the apprenticeships. So it's not just blue collar stuff, because our kids, Maori kids, our Pacifica, our young Indian kids, they're right across the spectrum now, right? Hairdressing, IP, all this sort of stuff. So
Yes.
we the main thing is train them. They don't have to. It might be just a training of 1 or 2 years sometimes,
Right.
but at least they get trained. And in this apprenticeship.
So, Minister, I think we've lost your volume. It might be coming back just now.
Right. We got you. You got me there?
Yeah. We lost you about 10, 15 seconds. You're back. Sorry.
I see. I see. But, the emphasis in terms of the skills and training and apprenticeships, is just huge. After the global financial crisis, National put so little in terms of the skill base, and we've just got a huge emphasis here. You've seen that type of talk from Grant Robinson, from Chris Hipkins, and myself. So just remember, when we talk employment, AJ, when I took this employment minister job on, I was actually tasked with the vulnerable groups, AJ. So
working with the Maori and Pacifica and those who are at the lower rungs.
Well, Maori, Pacifica, ethnic groups, also at the lower rungs, women, disability sector. Yeah, right. So people get confused a bit because employment goes right across the different areas. So you rightly at the start said, well, we took over an economy that was running at about 4.5%, the unemployment at the time, and it was a bit of a rock star economy, AJ. But the reality is, when you scratch below the surface, look at what the ethnic, a lot of the ethnic communities were telling us. They were working for barely minimum wage. Maori, Pacifica, and the unemployment stats were triple that of what the general stats were, right across those different sectors. So what I've done over the last 3 years is, you would have seen, you see Grant Robinson and them talking about a lot of the big, I suppose the big movements, but I've been concentrating on the smaller groups, because I felt that we had to strengthen these smaller groups, because in my view, they were forgotten by the national government. And we've seen some real results in the last 3 years, We've seen a turnaround in terms of Maori, in terms of Pacifica, in terms of ethnic groups,
So I think ethnic groups are probably overrepresented in that lower wage sector. And maybe another area is women. I think maybe figures about as high as 90% have been cited in terms of women being represented in the job loss figures. I think from memory, in that quarter over that lockdown period, about 11,000 jobs are lost and close to 10,000 were women. So how do you take women who are, say, in the retail sector or in hospo or in hospitality, and the jobs are coming, say, in construction? I don't know where else the jobs are coming, but construction is one of the areas. From women-centric jobs to something that has 80-90% male, workers, like the construction. So what do you do to address that gap? The most affected ones are women, and Maori women in particular. I think they're overrepresented.
You would be surprised, AJ, in terms of the programs I oversee, which had a high woman rate, believe it or not. Mana and Mahi cadetships, Maori trade and trade training, in the areas that I was looking after, and a lot of it, you would think just 90% male. I actually had 47% women. However, I do accept what you're saying. So I'm just talking about in my area. I do accept the figures you're talking about. So, we're working in tandem with Minister Genta, who's the Minister of Women, and Carmel Sepuloni in terms of the different groups, and getting focused programs for our ethnic and women groups, because we need to understand what's happening as well as that. So in terms of opening it up for women, we've tried to we're working with our employers in terms of the flexi wage. You'll be aware of the flexi wage, and we're saying that a lot of women are coming out of retail, and they're coming out of the hospitality area, and they want to start their own businesses. And so we're saying, with the flexi wage, let's be a bit more open with how we apply that, so that we can give women those opportunities who are coming out of the retail and hospitality area. So what you're going to see over the next 6 months or so is more target programs in that area. So I'm optimistic that we can provide more opportunities for women. As I said, in programs, we're already doing that, but I realise that you've got to get the women who are, in the hospitality area, in the nursing area, in the retail area, and provided a targeted opportunity for them, particularly if they want to start their own businesses. So that's on the plan in the next few months. Hopefully, if we get back in government.
So if let's just say, for argument's sake, I mean, the ones we are seeing as being the hard-hit sectors are tourism, education, airlines, retail, hospitality. These are the industries, that have kind of had a massive kick in the teeth. But do you think if these don't bounce back because of all the social distancing and lockdowns and all these other problems that are coming through, which areas, apart from construction, which is an obvious winner because of the lack of housing, which other areas do you think we will see some growth in? Which areas will help pull New Zealand out of this hole?
Well, we're putting, as I said earlier, we have to get our workforce upskilled. That is the single, I think that's the major change. I think as a government, we're all agreed we have to reskill our workforce. But there's going to be work, we think, in the infrastructure area. So we talk about infrastructure, you're not just talking about labourers and whatnot, you're talking about unlocking towns and unlocking potential, because part of our plan is we're going to upgrade, the local towns, what's happening in terms of the local hospital, what's happening in terms of, in the different areas. And if you're going to apply a 12 billion infrastructure, there's a lot of offshoots from there. So your retail, we're hoping retail is going to have a turnaround. Obviously tourism is going to be very tough for a while, AJ. Tourism is we're not sure when we're going to open that up again, but I think there's going to be opportunities. Obviously in the construction area, we've had a huge void and huge hole in that area. Retail, I think, can improve markedly. There's just going to be opportunities plus in terms of the different industries. So I'm not overly we are we worried? Of course, our debt's going through the roof, but you couple that with the way we've cushioned things in terms of the wage subsidies and the way that we're investing in our people, and we think the opportunities will appear.
It might be interesting to just have a tourism open day on a long weekend, where if you arrive or you pre-book, you get your first day for nothing, and the other 2 days you pay for it, and we'll probably flood all of the local, sites that people want visited, whether it's Queenstown or Rotorua or even the smaller, slightly out of the way places. It might be a very interesting thing to do for the tourism industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very tough for my colleague Calvin now with what's happening in tourism, but
yes. I think we might have again lost him for a short while.
$42 billion. 42. We're back, are we, AJ?
Yeah, hello? We are back. Hello? I think we lost you for 15 seconds. Kia ora. Kia ora again. Today, technology is playing with us.
I did say, I talked about that 12 billion infrastructure spend, and
Yes.
I just think, well, that it opens so many opportunities through our social and our public
Yeah.
housing. So there'll be opportunities plus, $1 billion
Sure.
to create jobs. And there's spin-offs, $200 million regional fund. We're also redeploying a lot of people
Right.
from the different industries, so it's not all gloom and doom, I suppose, AJ.
Sure. So I actually wanted to move away from the gloom and doom and actually acknowledge what you're saying. I think it's very positive, and the outlook is that if we get stuck in, we can get it done. However, just to put a balanced view to that, the job loss estimates coming through, whether from Treasury, which was at around 7.9%, 8% almost, and whether from some of the banking sector, they were thinking much higher numbers, 15, 16%. We are still looking at something like 190 to 250,000 people out of work in the next 3 or 4 quarters. Is that something we can weather easily? Is that something that really you need to look at jobs going to come from? What can we actually do apart from the areas you're talking about? Because that number is huge. By today's standards, it would be almost double.
Yeah, we're losing people that we don't want to lose. That's what we've said right from the start, is that some people, it's a sad thing is we are going to lose people. So it's not easy, but I think we with the type of strategies we have in place in terms of job creation, in terms of ideas, in terms of our reskilling the New Zealand workforce, in terms of getting the base right, for instance, we'll reinstate the training incentive allowance to assist single parents and struggling families with the cost of getting high-level qualifications. Incentives like that, the minimum wage, we've taken the minimum, we want to put it up to $20 an hour in 2021. Yes, the debt goes up, but people say, well, what about the debt? Well, absolutely, the debt is one thing, but people's immediate concerns and well-being, AJ, is the priority. And I have no doubt you watch other countries and you would see debt levels go through the roof. You go, just have a look at America for a start,
Yes.
Maybe that's
we are quite lucky here. We are really lucky. I think we are quite lucky here. We've seen the devastation is pretty much in comparison to the States or other parts of the world. It's very small, minuscule in comparison. But it's like my own backyard kind of thing. Like, people just look after what's happening to them. It's easy to get away from other people's problems because they're far away. So one other thing that's of interest to I guess a lot of people out there, if there was a large scale outbreak, and looking at Melbourne, that it wasn't even a large scale outbreak, but the effects on the economy have been huge. What plans are there to mitigate this, the jobless fallout if there was a bigger outbreak? Is the government thinking along those lines as well with all the stuff that's going on?
Yeah, we are thinking along those lines. That's why Grant Robinson's put aside was 14, I think it's 12 billion. So there's 12 billion. It's not like we've broken the bank, we've got 12 billion set aside for for another, what we call our COVID response fund, should the very worst case scenario happen. And we've learned a lot from our first part of our response. I think on the whole, things went pretty well, but things weren't perfect, and you saw National jumping all over us when somebody jumped the fence and whatnot. These things happen. But our borders are closed except to returning New Zealanders and certain work visas required, in terms of our recovery, and everyone must manage quarantine. And
you were very lucky, actually. If you look back, you were really lucky. The first sign of some kind of telling you off from the National Party actually cost Simon Bridges his job. So, you were quite lucky in one respect. But
I think AJ, we have learned a few things, So you put money aside. What have we learned? Well, we've obviously improved our contact tracing. This clearly worked as expected in our Auckland outbreak. This could have blown in Auckland, but it hasn't.
Yes.
So we've got the right plans in place, and the health and well-being of New Zealanders is our number one priority. So we looked at it from a health issue, despite the critics from National who would have had us opening up the borders at the drop of a hat, AJ.
That's interesting to hear based on the ministries, because they're kind of joined at the hip with MSD, the wage subsidy, and your employment area. How do you work together to avert the pandemic's effects?
Well, we're a government. We're a government that works across all of the issues. So we're also so it is a bit. People look at MSD and MV and all that sort of thing, but we work across all of the issues facing New Zealanders, and we all work to get together so we can ensure our people benefit through. So there is it's as ministers we meet all the time. There's a collective. We also, as ministers, have responsibilities in terms of the agencies. So you'll find myself, Kamau Sepaloni, Penny Henare, and I am. There's quite a connection with the ministers.
You basically get together for a hui over a cup of coffee.
Hui. Yeah, well, it's a good way of describing it. But we've got a way to go. But I think in terms of the agencies working with us, they know what our priorities are. And what we do is, as ministers, we try and have a coordinated approach. Now, our approach is different to the previous government, and I think you've seen that. Yes, we've still got a way to go in terms of, in terms of the statistics, because I don't want you to come back to me and tell me, well, actually, the statistics say this, which is might be your next point. We think we've got the framework in place and we've got the base in place.
I won't throw too many statistics at you. We'll keep it to the human level. So on the human level, we are looking at a minimum wage raise in the next few months by April, right? Is that, how is that going to, I feel, and a lot of people in small business that I'm talking to, we feel that there's going to be a big burden on the SMEs and smaller businesses in particular. There's applications for businesses winding up, liquidations have gone up considerably in the last few months. They bounced back a bit, and they're probably, after the wage subsidies all dried up, post-election, you'll probably see another surge. So apart from the wage subsidy and the $12 billion thing, where do you think you could cushion small businesses? Because they are like the backbone of the economy.
Yeah, I understand that, and we work with small business all the time, and we've got an small business advisory council, AJ, that you might have heard of, and so we work in conjunction with them. And I think that National say, oh, you don't care about small business. We're working with them all the time. Stuart Nash is working with them all the time, and so do we do what they say? Well, we initiated the small business loan scheme. We initiated the small business loan scheme directly because of what they were saying to us. We also, you would have seen some tax breaks that were given to them during COVID, and we also have put in the digital training sort of voucher setup in terms of what they wanted, because they wanted more access to IT. And so I think that if we're talking small business and minimum wage, that we have done a fair bit in that area. I understand we hear it all the time. Well, what about the small business owner? But the reality is the minimum wage had to be increased. The other side of that is a lot of the people in the lower socioeconomic areas spend. They're spenders, AJ, and they
they can't afford to not spend.
Well,
It's
that's
out the
right.
door. It's out the door
Yeah.
the next day.
Yeah, because and so they're spenders, but that's you're talking about growing the economy, and
Mhm.
and it's interesting, isn't it? You'll probably find those in that minimum wage group are responsible for growing the economy a
Sure.
bit more than guys on your huge salaries like yourself, AJ. And
No, I'm
they
I'm looking for the higher education help out from you,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I can upskill.
But well, that's but like they play their part in terms of
Right.
offering opportunity to small business. So
Okay.
it balances out because they get out there, the economy grows, small business grows, and
Mhm.
we're listening to small business in terms of the council we've set up and the sort of opportunities we gave them through
Yep.
COVID. In terms of the small
Yep.
business loans, tax breaks, etc.,
But that
etc. So you
So,
know.
Willie, not to put down what the government has been doing. I think the argument has been that businesses are being the help they are being given past the wage subsidy is all debt related. So IRD may be going a bit softer on paying PAYE or GST, but it doesn't wipe the obligation. You just have to pay it later, right? And the same for, say, the landlord. You just
Yeah.
because you didn't pay rent this month or you took a mortgage break doesn't mean that the debt has gone away. You still have to pay the debt. So beyond the debt,
Mm.
which they can't, if they can't hire, they can't sell enough, they can't survive. Beyond the debt, what other provisions could keep them going? And this is from an employment
Well,
perspective, not necessarily saying you have to make all the business people, take them under your wing and help them to make them do their businesses better. Just saying from an employment perspective, what would work for them?
well, no, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and we give them interest-free loans, and you've summed all that up. On top of that, though, we are offering subsidies, a lot of subsidies to the small
Mm-hmm.
business people if they
Mm-hmm.
take on employees.
Right.
They're not on their own. We're in total consultation with them. So we can't pay all their debts, but we can continually work with them, and we can. What are we doing? We're offering them apprenticeships. We're offering them mana and mahi people. I tell you, a lot of the small business people have said to us, we haven't had this sort of assistance before, and we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly speaking with them through our minister, working with them closely. So, I'm comfortable where we're at.
Sure. So where should they go to get some information if
The small business people.
yeah, if I have a mate who's running a small business and he's looking for some help and trying to figure out what's out there, where's the best place for him to start looking?
No, they just. Well, they can come to MB. They can come to the government agencies. They can come
Right.
to MB. There's lots of information at MSD.
Yeah.
In terms of because we're transitioning young people through.
Yep.
I always talk to if people get in touch with me, we'll direct them to officials, and we'll have officials working with them. In the
Yes.
Māori sense, we've got our government agencies, because what we want to do and what we're showing people is we'll partner up with not just big, like we work with iwi, we work with small businesses, medium businesses, and if they've
Sure.
got a passion and the business is doing okay, we'll work with them.
Right. So thank you very much for sharing that, and we'll share that with our viewers as well. There's a bunch of places they can go to, and if they want to, they can call us up and we can guide them as well. Now, just to take a sidestep, one of your other roles is Associate Minister for ACC. What's the current state? Do you think there's need for improvement, or it's like running really well and let's not break something that's not broken?
Well, I don't have the wider responsibilities for ACC. Is
Right.
it running well? My responsibilities in the term were the responsibilities in terms of Māori, actually, and
Sure.
for Māori, they've never been particularly happy with ACC. So what I have done
Too many
during the term
obstacles.
is
Too many obstacles.
facilitate,
I think,
because too many obstacles, so I mean, it's not just Māori either. Obviously,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying. ACC, when I was a talkback host, oh my goodness, you start talking about ACC, you open up the lines and the lines just go crazy. But I've been, Māori have the worst rehabilitation and not good. So I facilitated a number of major hui this year, and for what we have got, and I'm proud to say, is recently we just did a collective with Oranga Tamariki, ACC, and Te Puni Kōkiri with John Tamahere's whānau Water Commissioning Agency. And
Right.
we just signed up a $42 million deal 2 weeks ago with John and his team. And the whole emphasis, AJ, is about getting involved early. So it's about that you have to actually get involved in whānau before the whānau goes wrong. And so this is a major relationship. It might be looked at as a prototype, because what organisations like John's tell us is that they know the communities better than the government. That'd be the same with the Indian community too. You'll have your own community organisations who would say, well, just give us the dollars, please, Willie Jackson, and we'll deal with it, rather than your government agency. So you know what I'm saying here? This is about NGOs taking on my recommendation. They contributed $10 million to the collaboration. Tracy Martin, myself, Penny Henare, and of course John Tamahere, who masquerades as a political leader, but really is his main job as a community leader out West Auckland, as you know.
I like that, masquerades. So no, that's good. That's good. You're reaching out to the grassroots level. You're reaching out to. So it's really good to see that there's a role. You've been very active on the keeping the Maori indices of success improving, and that's really healthy to know. On the political front, just a very interesting observation. You must have had quite a tumultuous political career. First elected in 99, I think. You lost the one in 96, and then you were there till 2002, and then not in again till 2017. How do you stay the distance from the outside for so many years?
Well, for 15 years, I was involved in. I ran my own organisation out south, the Manukau Urban Māori Authority, and then I was running television shows and radio shows, and involved in many. Funny thing is, while I was out of politics, myself and John Tamahere, we were involved in politics so much it wasn't funny, and so and so I stayed the distance. I stayed the distance because politics never ever left us. And in 2016, I made a decision, myself and him, John Tamahere, that we wanted to enter politics again because we weren't happy with the funding and resourcing to our people. So I originally was talking with the Māori Party, but then the Labour Party made an offer to me, and so I made the decision to go back in. And it was a big decision because, life was pretty good on the outside, and on the inside here, it's a different story. But, it's been an honour, I'll say, AJ, being part of Labour. For me, Labour is a different party to the one I used to criticise all the time on radio and TV. I was a big critic, but I used to be a Labour Party member in the 80s until Rogernomics came along. And I didn't think Rogernomics cared about people too much. Then I think the Labour Party forgot about it with the foreshore and seabed. But like Andrew Little and Jacinda Ardern, particularly coming in lately, their focus is people. I found that attractive, and I decided to make the move. And it's been an honour so far. But I do it because I'm passionate about advocating for our people, for Māori, for not just Māori though, working class people, particularly the working class people of South Auckland and Auckland. I was a union official for 17 years, so and Māori advocate. So I do it because of the passion I have for people, and so far so good. Let's hope it stays that way in 2 weeks, AJ.
we hope so too, and I guess it's all in the stars. Now, just before we let you go, something totally unrelated to politics. You were in lockdown too. Did you cook up a favorite dish for the family? And what's one happy story with the whānau?
Well, funny in my whānau here, they don't like my cooking, because
That's the happy story. That is the happy story. You didn't give them anything.
No, but I love roast lamb. I love roast lamb. I love meat and all that. But my daughter says no, Dad, just leave it to Mum. And no, well, I'll tell you something about lockdown. It is, it is good for fun. It's particularly myself, where I'm on the move all the time, and then the happy thing for me is just being with family. I love being around my family, and yes,
Yes.
we're on these Zoom things that we can't ever quite get right all the time, but sitting at home for 4 to 6 weeks wasn't all bad, and I enjoyed it, and the real good thing is, the wife and I, after doing all our Zooms all day, would start watching Netflix at 9 o'clock and go to bed 2 o'clock every morning. So that wasn't so good.
No. We know that one. I think a lot of people will identify with that. There was no other way to fill the time. But
Yeah, that's right.
Mr. Jackson, or Willie Jackson, it has been indeed a pleasure to enjoy your conversation with you, and to have your energy coming out, and to actually get a sense of what's likely to come our way on the economic and employment front post the elections, should you guys get back in, which is on the cards possibly, and we'll keep an eye on it. So wishing you all the best, and have a great Sunday, what's left of it.
Thank you very much. All the best to you and your people who are listening, and it's been an honour talking with you today. Thank you very much. Kia ora,
Thank you very much.
koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora to you as well.
Kia ora.
Namaskar as well. Right.
All the best. All the best. And,
thank you very much.
Yeah, yes. And I forgot to say hello to our Priyanka, wonderful representative for you guys. So don't forget to vote for her, Priyanka.
In the Mangakiki electorate. In the Mangakiki electorate. We'll do that pitch for you. All right. Kia ora again.
Okay. Kia ora. Thank you.
So sorry, folks, about any problems with that connection. It kind of dragged on, but very kind and generous of Mr. Jackson to kind of stick with us and get through it. There was a lot of areas where it was, the technology wasn't giving us the best help. But I'm just going to check with my producer. That dragged on a little bit because of all the technical glitches. So can we now maybe look at winding up shortly, or yes, I think we may have to skip some of the stories we brought up earlier, because this was a slightly longish one than what we had wanted, and maybe I'll just quickly touch on that election 2020. What that'll do for us is it actually sets us up for next week as well, because elections have actually started. The polling has actually started in New Zealand, and this particular electorate has such a lot of bearing on. Well, this morning there was a new Auckland Central poll. It showed that there's a very tight race between Labour's Helen White, Nationals' Emma Mello, and the Greens candidate Chloe Swarbrick, who is in no mood to step aside because she's the one polling the lowest, but she's still in the race, as it were. So the latest Q&A Colma Brunton poll that was released Sunday morning shows a narrow gap between the candidates. When it comes to party vote support, Labour is well ahead on 47%, National on 28%, and the Greens on 13%. So it looks like we're headed for a coalition again, depending on which way the chips fall. The Auckland Central contest appears to be getting tighter. What's happened is Labour's Helen White is in front on 35%. She's fallen a little bit, followed by National's Emma, who has gone up a bit on 30%. And the Greens' Chloe Swarbrick is more or less where she was, maybe 2 or 3% up, on 26%. In the previous polls, White had 42.3, Mello 26.6, and Swarbrick had 24.2%. So this poll, which was taken for The Nation by Reed Research, was taken in the first half of September. Mello has closed the gap on White after an earlier poll, put her out by almost 16 percentage points. Now, Labour has always been concerned that Swarbrick could split the vote on the left because, there are people who are lean Greens and that will split the vote in. And Helen White kind of reiterated that concern when she was talking to Q&A. So, and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has been, she's campaigned actively with White and ruled out any sort of nod to help the Greens to win it. White has also said she would love to have Swarbrick pull back, but I doubt she's going to. Swarbrick responded by saying there was an underestimation of the independent thinking in Auckland Central. They valued hard work, independent things and boots on the ground, and had worked hard in the electorate as a result of being an MP in the past 3 years. So I guess it's a triangular contest, and the things are moving around a little bit. This triangle is kind of turning, as it were. So let's see what happens. The seat had been held by National MP Nikki K since 2008, but she announced her retirement from politics shortly after the tumultuous events in the National Party, including the resignation of leader Todd Muller in July. The Greens usually campaign only for the party vote, but have targeted Auckland Central as a seat to win as an insurance against its party vote falling below 5%. So things are definitely on the line for the Greens as well. This is Swarbrick's first term in Parliament. She has been the Greens' leading campaigner in the referendum to legalise the recreational use of cannabis. It came a poor third in the last election when Greenlist MP Denise Roche was the candidate. Let's keep an eye on that particular seat and see if it reflects what is going to happen on the national stage. Now, I think this story of the nuclear planes we'll keep for another time, but basically the doomsday planes, which can send signals to the arsenal of submarines and on-the-ground forces. If there's ever a problem with the president being out of function, out of reckoning if he falls ill, then the messages cannot get through to these submarines so far below the surface. And for that, they have to fly these special airplanes. And I'll bring you that news next time with a lot more detail about those particular planes. Moving on, let's look at the numbers in India. It's been a really, really shocking number that we have reached. It's not at all the kind of record we want to put about, but it has been 100,000 people, just over 100,842 people have been listed as having died from the coronavirus up till just the 2nd of October on Mahatma Gandhi Day. भारत में कोरोना से 1 लाख मौतें हो गई हैं। लॉकडाउन के खत्म होने तक देश में सिर्फ 5,000 जाने गई थी, लेकिन अनलॉक के बाद 1800% की तेजी से बढ़ा है मौतों का आंकड़ा। इसके बारे में सिर्फ यही कहा जा सकता है, विस्तार में बात नहीं कर पाएंगे आज, कि जैसे ही लॉकडाउन खत्म हुआ, people have stopped taking as much care, social distancing कई भाड़ने वाली बात हो रही है, और जो कर रहे हैं social distancing शायद उनके लिए भी हर चीज को संभालना मुमकिन नहीं है. This is a thing that everybody has to do. If I wear a mask, I'm not just protecting myself, I'm also protecting others. If I'm socially distancing, I'm not just protecting myself, I'm protecting others. पर ये देश 1.3 बिलियन लोगों का, यहाँ पर ये सब करना मुश्किल है. There are people who can't eat the next day or the same day even if they don't go to work. So what took all the lockdown period and took only 5,405 lives in the next few months has gone to 100,000 people. That is really sad. And we'll keep an eye on it and we'll see how things are going. And maybe the only vaccination available is going to be that mask. So हमारी हिदायत ये रहेगी कि social distancing कीजिए और अपने मास्क भी लगाते रहिए. We'll keep an eye on things that are happening in India as we go forward. And just as a summary, right now the number is at 100,842. We are only behind two other countries, United States and Brazil. The infections recorded have gone to 6.47 million. Like we said, 1.3 billion people. It's around 4 times larger than that of the United States. So there is going to be a lot of challenges ahead. And we do not know the reliability of the death rates in India. We don't know how they're collecting the data. In other words, the information is hard to collect and collate. So people have to just do it for themselves. Look after yourselves out there. In IPL news, बहुत कम संक्षिप्त में दिल्ली ने कोलकाता को 18 रन से हराया और बेंगलुरु ने राजस्थान को 8 विकेट से हराया. The details, I guess all the cricket followers have been watching it on the streaming services, or you can go online and check it. But I think the best part of this particular win was कि IPL के 13वें सीजन में 16वें मैच में दिल्ली कैपिटल्स ने कोलकाता नाइट राइडर्स को 18 रन से हरा दिया. शारजा में खेले गए पहले बल्लेबाजी करते हुए इस सीजन का सबसे बड़ा टोटल 229 रन का टारगेट दिया था. इसके जवाब में केकेआर 8 विकेट गंवाकर 210 तक ही पहुंच पाई. केकेआर की ये दूसरी हार है. इस जीत के साथ दिल्ली पॉइंट्स टेबल में टॉप पर पहुंच गई. 88 रन की पारी खेलने के लिए दिल्ली के कप्तान श्रेयस अय्यर को मैन ऑफ द मैच चुना गया. So, IPL में तो कुछ ना कुछ चलता रहेगा. In very short ones, the one I cannot read out loud, as it's a bit R-rated, is the Punjabi translation of the Trump-Biden debate from last week. One sample. This is not the R-rated one. Biden, तू निकम्मा कख नहीं कीता 47 महीनियां विच. That's 47 months. And Trump says, अरे तू की कीता कद्दू दे विच तीर मार दिता 47 सालां विच. The rest of it gets hilariously non-veg. We'll leave it to your imagination. Who knows? You probably received it as well. Another doozy under the hashtag Trump has COVID, and it says, our thoughts and prayers are with the coronavirus at this time, at this difficult time. To me, that says something about Trump's global image as a no-holds-barred fighter for himself and for his people. Regardless of your political beliefs or ideology, we at The Weekender on Sunday do wish the President and the First Lady and those around him who have contracted the coronavirus all the best. Wishing them all a speedy recovery. आप सब भी अपना ख्याल रखें, जहां भी हैं, safe रहें, स्वस्थ रहें. I'm your host, Ajay Vasisht, with The Weekender on Sunday. I will see you next week, same time. अभी भी उसी country में, which is the safest दुनिया भर में. Kia ora, salam, namaste, sat sri akal. Till next time, do follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'll see you again, same time, next week on Weekender on Sunday.